Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov this Saturday, August the 3rd, live on the Zone. Watch the Riyadh season card by using the link provided in the comments and in the description below. Get your first month on the Zone free when you buy the pay-per-view, and that includes Jack Cattrall versus Regis Prograis. Link is in the description. Alright, we are well and truly into fight week now. Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov live on the Zone as part of Riyadh season. It's a great fight. The card though, it's just... honestly, I cannot emphasize enough how good this card is, how excited I am for it. Obviously, I'll be doing an all-nighter. Stay up and watch this. I'll be watching it live with everybody. And when you look at the card, you see the depth, you see the names. It's just, honestly, I cannot emphasize enough how good this card is. We've got a cracking main event in Israel Madrimov versus Terence Crawford. But I want to talk about a fight that was... it was announced about a month or so ago. Now, originally on this card, we were meant to see Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu. Couldn't be helped. Tim Tszyu suffered cuts. They were quite bad cuts against Sebastian Fondora. They obviously didn't heal in time for him to be able to spar, so you can't really go into a fight without sparring. So fair enough, they had to pull that fight. As good a fight as it was, I was thinking, okay, it still doesn't let the card down. And that was a brilliant fight. In its place, they've done Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole, and that's the fight we're going to talk about here in this video. At the time of recording this, interestingly enough, it's still question mark next to the rounds on BoxRec anyway. That's a bit of a strange one. I would imagine it's going to be between 10 and 12 rounds, one or the other. In fact, Bakole is quite highly ranked. I think he's number 1 ranked by the WBA, so this is actually a very important fight for Jared Anderson in terms of potentially getting a title shot. So I would imagine it would be 12, but let's wait and see. It's a fight that I definitely look forward to. I certainly do. I think this is probably the fight I might even be most excited for, because it's not just the fact that I think Jared Anderson is talented. Bakole is very talented as well. Both guys throw a lot of punches. Both guys are not known for their defense. Both guys hit pretty hard. I think we are going to see an absolute heavyweight slugfest in here. We're going to see an absolute cracking contest between two big punching heavyweights. And I just don't think that this has the recipe for a bad fight. I think it has the recipe for a great heavyweight scrap. It is, though, for me, right, the progression that Jared Anderson was making, when he beat George Arias, who was unbeaten at the time, he went on then to fight Charles Martin. That was about July last year. Now, at the time, originally, I believe the opponent was meant to be Kozabutsky. And I can't remember the ins and outs. I think it might have been a visa issue that stopped him from going in there that night. Charles Martin took the fight on reasonably short notice anyway. And although he lost comfortably on points. He did give a good account of himself, and it made Top Rank, I think, look at Jared Anderson and say, okay, very talented as you are, because the talent just jumps out at you. You know, the speed, everything just jumps out at you when you look at Jared Anderson. I think Top Rank looked at that fight and thought, okay, let's rein it in a little bit. We're trying to rush him. We're trying to push him, and get him into some of the bigger fights. But I think after looking at that Charles Martin fight, and this is not a Charles Martin who, it's safe to say, maybe has seen some better days. That was probably a wake-up call, and it probably made them rein it in a little bit. He fought Rudenko then in his next fight, who's normally durable. He was able to stop him. Rudenko is going in there with Johnny Fisher next. So that's the kind of level they brought Jared Anderson back down to. He fought Riyad Mary then in his last fight back in April. And yeah, he won every minute of every round against a very negative opponent. I did see improvements there with Jared Anderson, you have to say. Now, I was thinking, okay, the way they're taking him, in the trajectory they're matching him with now, that's actually a very good opponent. Now is maybe a chance to kind of get back to the level they were looking at pre-Charles Martin. Kind of in around that level. You could look at guys like Luis Ortiz, people like that. I was thinking that's what they're going to do. They're still taking their time with him. And quite frankly, they have time with Jared Anderson. He's only 24 years old. I was thinking that's the trajectory they're going to go with. And then they announced this fight, which to me is it is a massive deviation. It's like that meme, when you see where the car just does that massive turn off the motorway. That's kind of what it's like for Jared Anderson. That's how I would liken it to, because this is way off the trajectory. Because Martin Bakole listed at 32 years old. He hasn't actually fought since the undercard of Fury versus Ngannou. That was way back in October. And in that fight, he fought Carlos Takam. Now, Carlos Takam, I think it's safe to say, has probably seen better days. I think that's fair to say. But still a very, very tough man. Still a man who takes some stopping. And in that fight, Bakole was a half a pound off being 300 pounds. He was very, very, very big in the ring that night. Very big in the ring. And he still had a good punch output, good work rate. Didn't look the fastest. But the way he was able to just break Carlos Takam down just like that, it was actually crazy, because he's been in there with the likes of Joe Joyce, had some success. He's gone 10 rounds with Alexander Povetkin, 10 rounds with Anthony Joshua. Very controversial stoppage that was that night in the Principality Stadium. So he's known for being very durable, Carlos Takam. And only, last year he was beating the likes of Tony Yoka. So there's still a lot there with Carlos Takam, or at least there appeared to be. Bakole just went in and that was it. So Bakole has had some good performances. He got a win over, actually, he was the man who took Tony Yokozo in a majority decision. It really should have been unanimous. He's built back very well following on from that loss he had to Michael Hunter nearly 6 years ago now. Him against Anderson is going to be a cracking fight. And as good as I think Jared Anderson is, I know myself that Top Rank, they didn't pull the reins on him for no reason. You know, they didn't, bring him back a couple of steps. They didn't bring him back 2 steps so they could take one giant leap. It appeared. It looked like they were going to take gradual steps with him. They haven't done that. And I'm wondering, is this just a bridge too far, too soon for Jared Anderson? If we were talking about a Jared Anderson, maybe who had another 2 years development in him, and he'd fought maybe a Luis Ortiz, kind of guys like that who are probably, fair to say, above the likes of a Charles Martin, but not crazy above. But we'll give him things to think about. If he had done that, I would say, okay, yeah, I'd probably favour him against Bakole. But I just think this might be a step too far too soon for Jared Anderson. How do I see it going? It's really going to depend. I think that this fight is really going to depend on how much Bakole weighs, because although last time out he weighed 299.5 pounds, he was able to impose himself physically on Carlos Takam. He was able to get the stoppage. He didn't look particularly fast in there. And I think that weight is a particularly bad weight for Martin Bakole. If I'm not very much mistaken, I think when he fought the likes of Kamil Sakalasky, he fought Kamil Sakalasky, and pretty much everyone goes the distance with him, or the majority go the distance with him. He was in the 250s. He fought Dominic Akalade, I think is how you say his name. He was 247. Now, this was many, many years ago in the 240s. He's 55 pounds heavier and noticeably slower for that. And I think with Anderson, with his speed and his punch output, if he's in there with someone like Bakole, who is potentially weighing 300 pounds, that could actually play into Anderson's advantage, because he will be the younger, he will be the fresher, he will have a massive speed advantage. His punch output is very, very good. He has good punching power. He really does. He has very good punching power as well, so they can both punch. Martin Bakole, when he's fought guys who have speed over him, because you got to remember, when he fought Michael Hunter had only just moved up to heavyweight from cruiserweight, and he looked a little bit softer in the midriff. So it wasn't like he was depleting himself to get down to cruiserweight. You look at Michael Hunter and you thought, okay, if he was in shape, he's probably comfy at cruiserweight. So he was able to go in, he was able to outbox Martin Bakole. I know Martin Bakole did pick up an injury in that fight. I think he hurt his shoulder. Nevertheless, it was still, Michael Hunter was winning the fight regardless. So when he's fought guys who have a speed advantage over him and they know how to use it and they can box a bit, he can struggle. He struggled against Sergey Kuzmin back a couple of years ago now as well. Do you remember that fight? So Bakole, for every good performance he's had some performances that are shaky, and against people who you would expect him to beat. In fact, you look at someone like Sergey Kuzmin, you would say on paper Carlos Takam should in theory be a harder fight, and it wasn't. It was a much easier, as the same with Tony Yoka, it was a much easier fight than someone like a Sergey Kuzmin, who has been in there with the likes of Michael Hunter and been found, quite badly wanting. So I would say with Anderson, use his speed, use his freshness, get that punch output going, test Martin Bakole. Like, he's not exactly the hardest to hit. And just when you look at Martin Bakole's record, when you actually look at it, how many big punchers he's been in there with? Like, really true big punchers who could hit him in the chin and see how it goes. Because Takam was never known for his punching power. Certainly Tony Yoka. I know Dave Allen would beg to differ, but lately he's not been known for his punching power. Sergei Kuzmin, not really. Kevin Johnson, certainly not. Marius Vac, same thing. Michael Hunter is... I would say Michael Hunter is probably pound for pound a bigger puncher than maybe Alexander Usyk, but I wouldn't say there's much of a muchness. So when you look at when you look at Michael or Martin Bakole's record, it's not amazing in terms of big punchers. This might be the biggest puncher he's been in there with. So we could probably ask the question: how well does Bakole actually take a shot? Realistically, how well does he actually take a shot? He will get hit in there against Anderson. Make no mistake about that. And Anderson can follow up with combinations. The question is, how well does Anderson take a shot? Because if you've ever watched Jared Anderson, you'll know that he is certainly not Pernell Whitaker in there in terms of defense. He can be hit. He can leave himself very open. I guess he has a way of looking at things, maybe that, offense is the best form of defense. It's really not in his case. In the case of someone like a Chocolatito, who was just unbelievably talented offensively and gifted, yeah, it is. But not even close. Jared Anderson, very leaky defense, very open. And Bakole, I don't doubt his punching power in the slightest. The same way you look at Anderson, you think he's got good power there. How will Bakole take it? How will Jared Anderson take his punching power? Carlos Takam is a decent puncher, and he did appear to stun Jared Anderson a couple of times in their fight. Mary's not really a puncher. Radenko's not really a puncher. George Arias was never, ever, ever a puncher at heavyweight. A very short heavyweight, very, very short heavyweight. Used to be a bit more aggressive back in the day. Never had punching power. Never had really any punching power to speak of. So against those guys, you can feel comfy going and taking a few shots. You can feel comfy kind of leaving your chin out, because you can kind of look and say, oh, well, he's not really going to hurt me that much. He's not really got anything to really throw me off my game. Bakole will have that. Because again, Jerry Forrest, not really known for his punching power. Alexander Teslenko again. Jeremias Karpensi. These are fighters who I do know and have heard of. The Karpensi family, there's a good few of them in the sport of boxing. But again, there's not really any big punchers on this record of Jared Anderson. So you could actually ask the question, how will he react when he gets hit by Martin Bakole, which will happen. Both these guys, as I said, they throw a lot of punches. They're both quite physical, and they both have pretty leaky defenses. Very leaky defenses, to be honest with you. So both guys are going to get hit. That is why I'm envisioning an excellent fight. I think this fight is going to be electric from start to finish. I don't think there's even going to be any real feeling out. I think it's just going to be straight to the point. Both guys going for the jugular. If you want a comparison, it may actually be, and I don't mean this in terms of stylistically, but it may be like a better version of Joe Joyce versus Derek Chisora that we've seen over the course of the weekend. It may actually end up being a better version of that, with more big punches thrown, with harder punches thrown, and maybe with both guys having spot to bother in the fight. That's what I can see this fight going like. At the end of the day, I got to pick a winner, and to say the least, I am absolutely up in the air about who I think will win. I really am. Some weeks I look at this fight and I think Anderson, then I think Bakole, and Anderson Bakole. It really is a fight that I can't make up my mind on, but I will, because I don't like sitting on the fences. And as good as this fight is, as fun as this fight's going to be, I think it's come just a little bit too soon for Jared Anderson. I do think that. But at the same time, I think he is just unbelievably talented. And although it's one of these fights where normally when I go into a fight, even if I think it's going to be very, very close and competitive, I normally do have a fighter who I just ever so slightly edge towards. And I was edging towards Bakole originally, but I'm going to go with most likely a points decision win a very close points decision win for Jared Anderson. And I say that and I predict that with no great degree of certainty. You understand that I do not predict that with any great degree of certainty. But I always give a pick, and my pick, Jared Anderson to win this fight, probably on points. But best believe this is going to be a fun fight. It is going to be a humdinger of a fight. Make no mistake about that. So that's my pick of this fight. Jared Anderson to win this fight on points. I've gone back and forth, but that's the pick. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Of course, this fight, we're going to be doing a live watch along. This fight live on the zone as part of Riyadh season. The link to the pay-per-view, where you can go and buy it, will be in the description. It'll be pinned in the comments. Have a look. Believe me, you will not be disappointed. And this fight itself, I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed. I'll leave it there. Hope you enjoyed it. Peace.